Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. We are here. We are live, broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, DLive, and Odyssey. We are here at the beginning of a new week, so I thought, it being a new week, that I should do something responsible for once and get something off of my to-do list. For quite some time now, many of you have asked me what my opinions were, or to cover and talk about alien abductions, different cases, specifically the most famous cases, which to me and to most people interested in this topic would be the Benny and Barney Hill case, the Travis Walton case, and Whitley Strieber's account of these interactions with extraterrestrial entities, or perhaps something else. So I have quite a lot of material that I have collected for quite some time now. And there was a time where I would quickly discount the alien abduction phenomenon, and people telling these stories largely due to the lack of physical evidence that normally accompanies these stories. It's problematic for me. And again, we get into the concept of falsifiability. If these people can't truly prove that their stories are true, and I can't truly prove that their stories are false, we are left sort of at a crossroads, at an impasse. And what do we do with that? It's quite interesting, and it's an interesting quandary to be in. Do I want to discount everyone's story? Not really. I used to. However, having talked to many of these experiencers, or talked to some lesser known experiencers, I should say, though I did once conduct an interview with Whitley Strieber, and I found him to be very believable. But it was the other lesser known people that you perhaps have never heard of that I talked to in some great detail. I have some recorded interviews that I've never broadcast with some of these people who have experienced this. So I have often and long wondered, why are so many people all around the earth, from different religions, different cultures, different educational backgrounds, different work histories, just different people from different cultures, all telling very, in some cases, incredibly similar stories? I wondered if this could be something neurologically based. After all, one might argue that the greatest monsters in all of human history don't come from outer space or even hell. They come from the human mind. And that was an avenue that I explored for quite some time. But tonight, I'm going to give you a general overview of the alien abduction phenomenon, its most famous, the three most famous cases, and its three what most people would call leading researchers into this strange phenomenon. So grab yourself a beverage and get comfortable. I have an incredible amount of information to share tonight. For once, I'm prepared. We've got notes, we've got images, we've got videos to share. It's going to be a great show, and thank you all for being here. I apologize for my absence last week. I had some terrible car trouble. My car died on Wednesday, and I needed to get that taken care of to make it to the cabin, and had a great weekend at the cabin, got some things off my to-do list there as well, and hopefully we'll be going back to tackle that bathroom. My poor wife, I promised her that she would have a proper bathroom there, well, as proper as it can be when you're out in the middle of the woods. There's still some walls to finish, a ceiling in the bathroom to finish, and some odds and ends. I'm intending to get that done as soon as possible. So I apologize for my absence last week. And also, I just wanted to make a note about I got some time to actually think about things. And so going forward, we are going to have sort of a change in schedule, but not really. Just a change in the way that we'll be doing things. And that is that there will be, or may be, live shows Monday through Wednesday with the possibility of Thursday or even some weekend shows. Yeah, this doesn't sound like I really made a clear decision. Um, Lately, there has been a struggle to keep up and with other areas of my life, and therefore things get ignored, and that's a problem. Especially when you have children and family responsibilities, you can't put things off forever. So I will be sort of refocusing my efforts. We will have live shows for sure Monday through Wednesday, but we may just do 3 live shows a week and that's it. And additionally, I've decided that we really need to start making more of the produced videos. People enjoy those short 10 or 20-minute videos that we make sometimes. So I'm going to be making those throughout the week, and I will be putting them first on Patreon and on our channel members. And also, I'm investigating a way to look at Twitch subscribers getting those benefits. You guys should. And I thank each and every one of you who've signed up on Twitch. We'll be giving you some information on how you can help our show, and it won't cost you anything if you have an Amazon Prime account. Now that we're a Twitch affiliate, you can throw the show a few bucks, and it won't cost you anything. But we should be giving those benefits. So what I'm going to be doing for sure is Monday through Wednesday live shows at 9 p.m. Eastern, but I'm also looking into changing that maybe earlier. And the produced videos, I'll be making the videos sporadically. And as soon as each video is finished, it will be uploaded for Patreon members and channel members. So you guys will get a preview. And then what we're going to do is the rest of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'll be doing premieres of those produced videos. And follow my Twitter at Stephen Cambion. If you really want to know up to date, I'll post whatever's going on is always on my Twitter at Stephen Cambion. Just need to re-examine how we're doing things here to try to do things better and have a better work-life balance. Despite how I would love to just do this full time, I have other things that are responsibilities and other things that I have to do to generate funds besides this show. And those things have also been suffering. And last week or 2 weeks ago, I thought, I'm just going to quit everything else and just concentrate on the show. But then we take a look at some spreadsheets and think this is not going to work. And also, I really prefer to have income outside of the show. And that is so that I do not become one of the people that I see who becomes a slime ball doing this alone for money. I saw that in the entertainment industry as well. While I was in the entertainment industry, if a guy was just really working on his aspirations, whether it be a songwriter or a comedian or a magician or whatever, if he had a day job, he wasn't a slime ball. If he had some other kind of income, but it was these guys that just go full bore, full time, they turn into really not nice people because they have to do whatever they have to do, stab everybody in the back, whatever they've got to do to generate enough funds to live off of. I don't want to be those people. So there will always be something else I'm doing besides the show to generate funds for, normal things. And we've talked about this before. I don't use show funds for things like personal bills, expenses, whatever. The funds for the show will continue to be solely for the show. So back to tonight, we have a wonderful show planned for you. We're going to give you a really good overview into the alien abduction phenomenon, the major players and major stories, and more. So alien abduction stories, they have captured the imagination of many people for decades, including myself. But when I look at these things, these stories, I think they need to be approached with a healthy dose of skepticism. because the idea of extraterrestrial beings abducting humans is certainly intriguing. And there are several reasons why these stories, however, should still be viewed with a critical eye. And I have mentioned that I once refused to talk to anybody that was telling stories of getting abducted by aliens. I then changed my tune and started interviewing, talking to, and communicating with many different experiencers. And I had softened, I suppose, my criticism and my total skepticism of most of it. It used to be that I said, until you have physical evidence, I'm not interested in you just telling me a story. However, when I started interviewing many of these people, I started noticing some common, similar threads to their stories, and it was intriguing to me. These people, I was sure, didn't know each other. They weren't communicating and, passing notes back and forth for what to tell me, but there was a great deal of sameness in their story, which again made me wonder if there was some neurological basis for these experiences. Many people think that that could be the case. Sleep paralysis or lucid dreaming or vivid dreams and other things may be an explanation for this phenomenon. One of the main issues with alien abduction stories, however, is the lack of concrete evidence. And despite numerous claims of abductions over the past decades, there exists, to my knowledge, no actual physical evidence to support these claims. No one has been able to produce a piece of alien technology, despite claims of people claiming alien implants. Go try to find the data on those alien implants that conclusively proves that those implants are aliens. What you get is a lot of tantalizing maybe proof and no definitive answers about those so-called alien implants. People have been unable to produce a physical specimen or tissue sample of an alien being during these abduction experiences, despite claims of fighting back against them in some cases, scratching them. Additionally, to my knowledge, there is no photographic or video evidence of an alien abduction taking place, not a real one. There have been several hoaxes that were proven to be falsely generated hoaxes that were created to make money. Another issue with the alien abduction stories I found is two things. First, while there is a sameness or familiarity between many different cases of people making these claims, there is also a lack of consistency in the accounts. Many abduction stories are based on the testimony of the alleged abductee, but these accounts often differ in key details. For example, the physical appearance of the aliens, the location of the abduction, and the procedures performed on the abductee can vary greatly between stories and individuals. This lack of consistency raises questions about the veracity of the claims. However, people on the believer side will argue that there are different alien species abducting people, and that would explain a difference in the appearance of the aliens or how they are different physically. And I understand those objections to my skepticism, but it's still worthy of note that there are vast differences in many of these accounts. And although the gray type alien seems to be the primary alien that people encounter during these experiences, there are a lot of historical evidence of completely different kind of alien species, including human-like ones, reptilian ones, insectoid ones, mantid aliens, and more. I even heard an abduction account where somebody claimed they were abducted literally by fishmen aliens, men that appeared to be fish-based or based on fish. And the ship even had an atmosphere of water, but they gave him an oxygen mask or something like that. And many of the stories of alien abduction have been found to have psychological explanations. For example, some researchers suggest that some of the experiences described in abduction stories may be the result of certain sleep disorders, such as sleep paralysis, which can cause vivid hallucinations and a real sense of being paralyzed. Others have suggested that the stories are the result of a phenomenon known as false memory syndrome, which can cause people to remember events that never actually occurred. And there is substantial and supportive evidence that false memory syndrome exists in humans. It's been studied for quite some time. It's also worth noting that some of the people who claim to have been abducted or have admitted to fabricating their stories, either for financial gain, attention, fame, or even psychological reasons. So there are people who just make up stories, again, to make money. It's important to note that the primary or most famous alien abduction cases that we'll go over tonight have all generated millions of dollars, each of them. And there's 3 of the major cases. And it can be argued that each of those 3 major cases by themselves alone have generated millions and millions of dollars in revenue in the form of documentaries, books, speaking fees, interview fees, and more. While the idea of alien abduction is certainly intriguing to me, I still think that there's a lot of reasons why these stories should be viewed with a critical eye. And I believe that many of the people that I have talked to aren't liars. They truly believe that they had these experiences, which again leads me at a strange crossroad, because what can I do with a story that has absolutely no physical evidence? I can't prove it's true. And likewise, I can't prove it's not true. So I wonder about the value of that personal account. Now, certainly, I think that some of these accounts do have value if we believe that aliens are visiting Earth. Maybe there's something to this, and that's always what I come back to. I cannot just completely dismiss these claims because there's just too many people, many of which have not gone the profit motive route. In other words, there have been many, many people who have reached out to me that I've communicated with, even interviewed, that didn't want any money. They didn't want fame. They wanted to remain anonymous. They just wanted me to understand more of this phenomenon. And I thank those people because I have a greater understanding of, I think I have a greater understanding of what it is that they are experiencing. But I still think, again, it's important to approach these stories with a healthy dose of skepticism and keep an open mind to alternative explanations, such as neurological conditions. Now, there are 3 major alien abduction cases, and we are going to go over those. And the first is, we're going to go sort of in chronological order. So the first major alien abduction case that really came to widespread fame and cultural awareness was the Benny and Barney Hill case. And I'm going to share my screen. And there have been famous researchers such as Stanton Friedman, who emphatically, I talked to Stanton Friedman about this case a bunch of times before his passing. By the way, rest in peace. He was a really good man. He emphatically believed both Benny and Barney Hill were telling him the truth. He was a very educated man. At times, I thought maybe he wanted to believe it too much, and he generated some cognitive bias, which may have informed his belief that they were telling the truth. But the fact remains that many of these abduction experiencers are very convincing and genuine in their telling of their story. And quite often, people believe that they're telling the truth. So here is a sign in the town of Betty and Barney Hill, Betty and Barney Hill incident. On the night of September 19th, 20th, 1961, Portsmouth, New Hampshire couple Benny and Barney Hill experienced a close encounter with an unidentified flying object and 2 hours of lost time while driving south on Route 3 near Lincoln. They filled an official Air Force Project Blue Book report of a brightly lit cigar-shaped craft the next day, but were not public with their story until it was leaked in the Boston Traveler in 1965. This was the first widely reported UFO abduction report in the United States, and that is correct. And I've often wondered, there's just an incredible amount of similarities between Betty and Barney Hill's original story and many of the new abduction stories that we hear today in modern times. And it makes me wonder, are people copying information from this very famous case, or are they having similar experiences? There's many similarities, including missing time, medical procedures, telepathic communication, small beings with big eyes, and more. And here we see a photo of Betty and Barney Hill. It's interesting to note that they were an interracial couple. And so an interracial couple making very controversial claims at the time, I would think one of the things I thought about them is that they might try to avoid any drawing attention to themselves, because remember, this was still back when an interracial couple was sort of looked down on, right? Many people did not agree with this kind of a marital situation, and they would have faced a lot of criticism. Maybe it would be best not to bring attention upon themselves as an interracial couple, but they still did. So I have some more notes here. Benny and Barney Hill alien abduction case is one of the most well-known and controversial cases of alien abduction in history. The Hills, a married couple from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, claimed to have been kidnapped and taken aboard a UFO by extraterrestrial beings in 1961. The case began on September 19, 1961, when Benny and Barney were driving home from a vacation in Canada. They had reported that they had been driving on a deserted stretch of road in the White Mountains of New Hampshire when they noticed a strange object in the sky. According to the Hills, the object quickly descended and hovered over their car, causing them to become disoriented and experience a period of missing time. When they regained consciousness, the Hills claimed to have been taken aboard the UFO and subjected to a series of medical examinations and other procedures by the alleged alien beings. They also claimed to have been shown a map of the universe and given a message of peace and unity. Interesting to note that at first, researchers claimed that that map showed that the aliens came from Zeta Reticuli. Later, that map was sort of debunked, and it was not correct that it showed a certain star system. The Hills reported their experience to the Air Force's Project Blue Book, which was investigating UFO encounters and sightings at the time. However, the Air Force was unable to confirm the Hills' story and concluded that they had likely experienced a, quote, collective hallucination, unquote. The case went on to gain widespread attention in the 1970s when the Hills underwent hypnosis in an effort to recover lost memories of the event. The hypnotic sessions revealed additional details of the Hills' abduction experience, including descriptions of the alien beings and their craft, as well as a message of peace and unity that the Hills claimed to have received. It's very important to note that many stories of alien abduction include memories recovered under hypnosis. I am very suspect of recovered memories, and there are many people, it's a cottage industry, believe it or not. There are people making full-time livings just doing hypnotic regressions for alien abduction victims. And wouldn't you know, they find that these people recover memories about aliens almost every time. One of the best examples I can think of that, well, there are several, but one second, let me, I don't want to give a wrong name. Let me look up her name so I don't get it wrong. There is a woman, Barbara Lamb, I apologize. So there's a woman named Barbara Lamb who does these hypnotic regressions. And when you know, she always finds aliens when she does the hypnotic regressions. I find that more than a little suspect. And of course, there's a profit motive that may have some, it may have something to do with them finding memories of aliens. Despite the Air Force's conclusion that the Hill story was likely a hallucination, many people continue to believe in the validity of their abduction experience. Supporters of the Hills claim that the couple's story is one of the most credible and the most well-documented cases of alien abduction, and that the Air Force's investigation was incomplete and biased. So the case of Benny and Barney Hill is still hotly debated today and is still considered as an unsolved mystery and a topic of debate among ufologists and skeptics alike. The couple's story has been retold in books, documentaries, and even a TV movie starring James Earl Jones, believe it or not. And these books, documentaries, keep alive the intrigue and the fascination of this case. I'm going to show you some other stills. And again, the skeptical part of me needs to remind myself that this case, the Benny and Barney Hill case, has generated millions of dollars in revenue. There are many, many books on the case. Their case is included in almost, I couldn't tell you how many books I have that at least give a brief overview of the case. It's included in documentaries. It was the subject of a television movie, a comic book. And here we see a shot of the Hills, the couple, under hypnotic regression. One thing I will say is that despite my skepticism of hypnotic regression, there are I believe there are existing audio tapes. I got it somewhere in audio. I wish I would have been able to find. I looked for it before broadcast. I apologize. But if you are interested in this case, get yourself to listen to some of the hypnotic regressions that there exists tapes of on the internet. And once you listen to those tapes, at least for me, my skepticism that they were making it up sort of melted away, because both these people were completely and totally terrified. Now, can somebody just making up a story just act terrified under hypnosis? Maybe, but it made me believe their account much, much more, because in my view, it would be hard to fake that level of terror that they seem to be experiencing during these hypnotic regression sessions while encountering these aliens that took them aboard the craft. And of course, here is another shot from a documentary, Alien Abduction, The Odyssey of Betty and Barney Hill. Here's another documentary, Alien Abduction, The Betty and Barney Hill Story. And here, and this was one of my favorites. This is a great movie. You can watch it free, YouTube with ads. I'm sorry, I don't recall. Just search Betty and Barney Hill. I'll see if we can't find a link for you. This movie is on YouTube, starring James Earl Jones. And I don't remember the other actress's name, but interestingly, she played Roseanne Barr's mother in later television. But this was a television movie starring James Earl Jones as Barney, and it recounts the entire experience and story. I thought it was very well done. If you like aliens, it's a great film. I thought it was enjoyable, and I think that Betty and Barney Hill sort of endorsed that they did a very good job at an accurate portrayal or depiction of their experiences. Stanton Friedman once told me that there were a few little things that they got wrong, but nothing of great importance. So there we have the Betty and Barney Hill story. Now, this leads us to our next most famous case, and that would be, who's the next contestant on? That would be the Travis Walton case. Now, this one has been the subject of debate, especially recently. And before I can begin this presentation, I should mention that recently, one of the witnesses to the Travis Walton case sort of came out and said they made it all up for money. And he was telling a researcher how they faked it using a fire tower in the middle of the woods with spotlights on it. And then perhaps Travis just hid out for a week. The Travis Walton case was always interesting to me because most alien abduction victims claim that they were kidnapped or abducted for a few hours and then put back. But in the case of Travis Walton, he was gone for a full-on week, and local authorities were searching for him, and he was gone for a full week. Now let me share my screen once again. Oh, I have it. Here we go. So, and again, I hate to keep coming back to this thread, but it's important for me to note that the Travis Walton story, like the Betty and Barney Hill story, has generated millions and millions and millions of dollars in revenue. There was a Hollywood movie called Fire in the Sky. There's talk of a new remake of the Hollywood version of the story being developed right now. But last I heard, that was green-lighted, but sort of in limbo. But I believe they're making another version of the Travis Walton story as a Hollywood movie. This one, Fire in the Sky, very good movie, I thought. And there's a real disturbing, the part where he's on the spaceship is incredibly disturbing. And here's some shots from that, where he is apparently aboard a spacecraft. And I have some additional notes here about the case. Travis Walton alien abduction case, like Betty and Barney Hill, is one of the most well-known and controversial cases of alien abduction history. According to Travis Walton, in 1975, while he was a 22-year-old logger in Arizona, he claimed to have been abducted by a UFO while working with a logging crew in the Sitgreaves National Forest. The incident occurred on November 5th, 1975, when Walton and his crew were working in the forest. According to other members of the crew, they saw a bright light in the sky and they went to investigate. As they approached the object, they saw that it was a saucer-shaped craft. Walton, who was reportedly closest to the craft, was suddenly engulfed in a big beam of light. And the crew panicked and fled the scene, leaving Walton behind. The crew later reported the incident to the police, and a search party was organized to look for Walton. He was found unconscious. I apologize, I was incorrect earlier. It was 5 days later he was found unconscious. And I mentioned that one of the reasons this case has interested me is because most abduction victims claim they're missing a few hours. In this case, Travis Walton was gone, nowhere to be found, for 5 full-on days and nights. Travis claimed to have been taken aboard the UFO and subjected to a series of medical examinations and other procedures by the alien beings. He reported that he was returned back to the forest and he was found by a fellow crew member. This case gained widespread attention and was heavily investigated by the Air Force's Office of Special Investigations, which was investigating UFO encounters. The Air Force was unable to confirm Walton's story and concluded it was likely a hoax. Walton and his crew passed polygraph tests which supported their story. However, Walton also failed a lie detector tests, which we'll see tonight. Several experts testified that the men's reactions and behavior were consistent with those of individuals who had truly witnessed an extraordinary event. And when you talk about the Travis Walton case with those in the know, you will find that believers will tell you that Travis Walton passed lie detector tests and the crew passed lie detector tests. However, that's a bit of a problem, because what people don't tell you is that the crew was asked specific questions like, did you murder Travis Walton? And they said no. That's the lie detector test that they passed. And, there's all kinds of controversy about that. But we do have evidence and proof that Travis Walton failed several lie detector tests, an original one given by investigators at the time of the event, and later he failed a lie detector test on a television show. where he was asked to recount his experience, and if he was being truthful, he said he was. He failed that lie detector. I am very suspicious of lie detectors as being arbiters of truth. There's various ways that one can beat a lie detector test. For example, pathological liars or psychopaths and sociopaths can pass a lie detector test while they're lying through their teeth to you. So I understand that people who want to support the story claim that people passed lie detector tests. Well, people also failed some, including Travis Walton failing some too. So, that's one of those situations where I think we throw out the lie detector tests as inconclusive. Passed some, failed others, weren't asked direct questions about aliens and flying saucers and UFOs, but rather, did you have anything to do with his disappearance, or was violence involved, or whatever the case may be. Like the Betty and Barney Hill case, despite the Air Force's conclusion, many people continue to believe in the validity of the Waltons' abduction experience. Supporters of the case claim that the evidence and testimonials support Walton's account, and that investigators didn't do a good enough job or were somewhat biased to believe that it was a hoax. There are various stories, however, that Travis Walton and his crew won a big prize from the Inquirer newspaper at the time, which was holding a contest for best story. And it always seems suspect to me that this event somehow circumvented perfectly with that large prize. I think it was a $50,000 prize. And but like other famous cases, the Travis Walton case is still considered a topic of debate among believers, ufologists, and skeptics alike. And like I have mentioned, the story also generated millions and millions of dollars in the form of books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood movie, Fire in the Sky. To many, however, it remains one of the most intriguing and perplexing alien abduction cases in history. And we're just going to show you some more of these stills. Here's Travis Walton 40 years after the event, holding a special event there in the woods near where he claimed this alien abduction took place. Here is a documentary, The True Story of Travis Walton, One Man's Survival After a Terrifying Journey. And Fire in the Sky, based on a true story. Again, this was the Hollywood version of the story, which I thought was pretty good. Pretty good. Now we have one final famous alien abduction case to get through, and we're gonna do that, and that would be Whitley Strieber, who I was lucky enough to get to interview once, and I'm glad that I did, because quite honestly, before getting to know Mr. Strieber a little bit personally, I was very suspicious and very skeptical of his story. After all, Whitley Strieber, for those unaware, was, some would say, a very successful fiction writer. He wrote things like The Howling, which was turned into Hollywood movies, and a few others, before having these experiences and turning his attention to writing almost exclusively about aliens. Now, I believe he still does write fictional books, but most of his books are about his experiences. And I would think that of these three cases, arguably the most famous, or the one with the most cultural impact, I would argue, may be Whitley Strieber's case. When Whitley Strieber released his book Communion, that book was everywhere. Everywhere. Pardon me. I'm sure I'm going to get some messages. I forgot to hit the cough button, you audiophiles. I apologize. It's a live show. You get it, warts and all. So this Communion book was everywhere. I'm going to share my screen here. and we'll talk about this. This book for a time was literally everywhere. I remember riding the bus and getting on the train, the elevated platform. Some would call it a subway, but it's elevated for some time. I'm from Philadelphia. So before it goes down into the subway tunnel, it's elevated for a stretch. We call it the L. But I remember getting on a bus and catching the L to go to Center City. And I saw people, 3 or 4 people on the bus, all reading this book at the time, and I got on the train and I saw people reading the book. If I would go to school, other kids would be talking about the book or reading the book or passing the book back and forth. I grew up Catholic, so we were actually in trouble. We would actually get in trouble for having this book. The priests and nuns would say that's not an alien, that's a demon that he's communicating with. And therefore, we weren't supposed to read the book. But that only made me want to read the book more. And also, I believe that Whitley Strieber's depiction of one of the alien species that he encountered during his experience here on the cover of the book became the archetype of an alien. And this famous depiction, I think, had huge cultural impact because it seemed like every alien after this book was very, very similar. Big head, small nose, slit for a mouth, almond-shaped eyes, black eyes. So more than the other cases, I think that this case had an incredible cultural impact. And it came, maybe I didn't do these in chronological order. It sort of came Betty and Barney Hill first, then Communion, and then Travis Walton's story. Mr. Whitley, he, I don't know, I interviewed him and I talked to him somewhat off air, and I found him to be believable. I previously thought that he was just making this up. This was all profit driven. But again, it is important to note that Mr. Strieber's story is largely profitable. There was even a Hollywood movie starring Christopher Walken. And if you get a chance to see that, I highly recommend that you do. I thought it was incredible. One of my favorite movies about aliens. And again, apparently based on a true story. I also found it interesting that he had his experiences in a cabin in upstate New York. And I'm not entirely sure, but his cabin is like less than an hour, I believe, away from my cabin in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. And though I've certainly never had an alien experience at my cabin, we hear many strange things out there in the woods. And I often wondered if he was hearing similar things to what we hear. Sometimes we hear screeching off in the woods. Sometimes we hear things walking around. And I wondered if that played any part in his experiences, because his original experiences that he wrote about in Communion all took place in a remote cabin in upstate New York. And here we see Christopher Walken's depiction, the mantid insectoids, and here's a shot of Communion on VHS. And I think it's arguably one of the best movies about aliens. But let's get into some notes I have on Mr. Whitley Strieber. His case is one of the most well-known cases of alien abduction. In 1985, Whitley Strieber, a best-selling author and speaker, claimed to have been abducted by a UFO while staying in a cabin in the woods of upstate New York. Strieber's story began on December 26, 1985, when he and his wife were staying in a cabin in the woods in upstate New York. According to Strieber, he was awakened in the middle of the night by strange noises and saw a UFO outside his window. He claimed that he was taken aboard the craft and subjected to a series of medical examinations and other procedures by the alien beings. His story gained widespread attention in the following years, and he wrote about his experiences in several books, including the best-selling book Communion, A True Story. Stryber's account of his abduction experience is considered one of the most detailed and well-documented cases of alien abduction. However, his account of his experience has been met with skepticism by many in the scientific community. His critics argue that his story is a work of fiction and that the events he describes were likely the result of sleep disorder or other psychological condition. Despite the skeptics, his account of his experience continues to be widely discussed and debated in the field of ufology. It's interesting to note that he does a podcast or a show quite like this one, where he talks very, very extensively, and he's also offered many, many more books on strange experiences. Some people, however, believe that his story is one of the most credible cases of alien interaction and that his detailed account provides valuable insight into the phenomenon. It's also worth noting that Whitley himself has stated that he does not know for sure if his experiences were aliens, interdimensional beings, or were even real or a product of his imagination, and that the truth may never be known. He has also acknowledged that his books are a mix of reality, imagination, and symbolism. And one second here. The detailed account of his experiences and ongoing experiences continue to keep alive the fascination with the subject of extraterrestrial encounters. And so this will conclude at least our discussion of the three most famous or most well-known alien abduction cases. But I thought that we should certainly discuss the three most well-known or famous UFO researchers as well. And those, my friends, would be, we have John Mack, Bud Hopkins, and Jacobs. And I have some things to share, but we're coming up on an hour now. So before we do that, I'm going to take care of some business here and remind you that we're a viewer-supported show and let you know how you, too, can help support the show.
Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truth Seekers. Thank you for your generosity and support. Thanks for being here. This is Truth Seekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truth Seekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. You'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat group during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers.
Okay, and we are back. Welcome back. I am going to forget this for the rest of my life, but there is another way that you can help our show now that we are a Twitch affiliate. And here's a friend of the show to tell you how you can support the show if you have an Amazon Prime account. It won't cost you anything.
Praise the cash. Just want to do a quick tutorial on how to set up Amazon Prime to Twitch. So if you want to help out Truthseekers Show and Steven, I want to put together a quick tutorial. Now, I'm not an expert on this, so I was just playing around. This is how I did it. So you may find a different way to do it, but if you're not sure, I'm going to walk through what I did. First, right here in Prime Loot. Now, this is on a PC and not Apple. May be different, but at least you're going to see what I'm doing on my laptop. You're going to see Prime Loot up here. Click that on. And here you're going to have in the purple box to activate your free trial, and it's free. So you just go through that. It'll take you to Prime Gaming. From here, you'll see how to activate your Prime Gaming. I don't think this is necessary to get your free subscription to Twitch from Amazon Prime. I just went and did it because I wasn't sure and I was playing around. So if you're not sure if you want to do this, just skip it and go to the next step. Then over, if you do your drop down on your Amazon account, you're going to have this here to say link Twitch account. So I'm going to click that, and all this is going to do, it's going to link your Amazon account with your Twitch account. So you click link down there in that little button, and it's going to have what is your Twitch name and then your name on your Amazon account. And I'm going to have my name blurred out just so everybody's not seeing it. I'm going to click confirm, and it's going to go through the processes. Now my Amazon account is linked to my Twitch account. I go back to Twitch, and I'm on the Truthseekers Show, and right here you got Steven's face there. Just come down here to subscribe, click that, and it's going to bring you all the way down here. Now you can subscribe for $4.99. This is very similar to the YouTube membership, where you can become a member on the YouTube side or watch it for free. Here you can subscribe to his channel and pay $4.99 a month, or you can come up here and click this little box, say use Prime sub. Now it's free. Now I get 1 month. Now the thing is every month I have to go out there and resubscribe. Hopefully they're going to send me an email to remind me to do that. Then I can go out there and I can click this every month, and Steve's going to get some money from Amazon. We do not pay for that. This is part of my Amazon Prime subscription. That this is just one of the services. And I didn't realize it, but Amazon bought Twitch. That's the reason they're putting these two together. So I'm going to do click the subscribe button. Now I am subscribed. I got a founder badge and I got some different stuff, and close. And now I am subscribed. I did not pay anything. However, Steven gets some money to help producing the top quality programming that he's been doing. So go out there and praise the cash and sign up for Twitch subscription, especially if you got Prime. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps Steven out. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Voices in my head on Twitter, who helped us with that. Okay, so we have covered the, if you're just joining us, you're watching Truth Seekers. We're broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, DLive, and Odyssey. And I am giving an overview of the alien abduction phenomenon, as well as the 3 most well-known researchers. And we have covered the 3 most famous cases of alien abduction. Now we're going to get into the researchers. We're going to begin with a man named John Mack. John Mack was very interesting to me because he came from such a prestigious background. He was a Harvard-trained psychiatrist who became famous for his research on alien abduction. Mack, who passed away in 2004, was a professor at Harvard Medical School and a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. He's known for his work on the psychological and spiritual aspects of alien abduction experiences. Mack's interest in alien abduction began in the early 1990s when he began to interview individuals who claimed to be abducted by extraterrestrial beings. And an interesting aside is that Harvard sort of tried to discipline him, or, they called him before like a board to explain why he was doing this research. And it's interesting that Danny Sheehan, the well-known UFO guy, also a lawyer for people like Dr. Stephen Greer or Lou Elizondo, represented him, and they backed off and allowed him to continue his research. Mack's approach to the subject was unique, as he did not approach the subject with skepticism, but with an open mind and willingness to listen to the experiencers. He interviewed over 100 people and wrote 2 books on the subject: Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens in 1994, and Passport to the Cosmos, Human Transformation and Alien Encounters in 1999. Mack's research focused on the psychological and spiritual aspects of alien abduction experiences. He believed these experiences were not just hallucinations or delusions, but were very real. He also believed they had a profound impact on the individuals' lives who experienced them. He argued that the abduction experience had the potential to transform an individual's understanding of the world and their place in it. He also suggested that the alien abduction experience could be a spiritual awakening, and encounters with the aliens were not just physical, but also spiritual. Mack's death in 2004 marked the end of an era in the field of alien abduction research, but his work continues to be referenced and debated by researchers, experiencers, and skeptics alike. His books remain available, and his ideas and approach continue to be influential in the field of abduction research. One of the things I always found fascinating is that this man was a very, very well-educated man and a famous Harvard psychiatrist before he ever approached this strange topic or subject. It's just interesting to me that when someone is so well educated, they do not quickly discount people telling these stories. And it was one of the things, reading his books especially, were one of the things that made me rethink my own skepticism towards the subject and rethink maybe I should be interviewing some of these people. And I did. I began to do that. So I've got a video for each of these famous UFO researchers to share and we'll talk about. We're going to put our fair use banner up. After all, this is a transformative work. We're educating the public and critiquing the videos that we are sharing. This is covered under fair use and is certainly allowable by law. We will be critiquing and discussing the video with the live chat, which certainly makes it a transformative work. 1 second. Let me go and let's do this here. And this is called John Mack, Human Encounters with Aliens. And this is an excerpt from a much longer piece.
I'm bubbling with questions to ask you, but the first one that I want to come back to, you use the word spacecraft. How would they or you know that what they saw was actually a spacecraft?
Often the person has not actually seen the spacecraft, but often they have. A number of these cases, when they're floated through the wall of their home, through the window, through the door, again, this so many of the details of these experiences make no sense in our kind of the Newtonian, Cartesian, Western, whatever you want to call it, notions of reality, and yet the stories are consistently described with again, the self-critical attitude that the people have, and they may see.
Yeah, and I've always had, you know, when people are describing their experiences of alien abduction, I've always been more skeptical. I have to say, I'm a little more skeptical when people start saying things like, yeah, I was floated out of my bed, through my house walls, up to a craft. It's a lot to accept based on just the story.
See
Oh, hold on one second, friends. I did it again. I should have posted this separately, so I apologize. Let's 1 second. Let me share my screen again, and we'll try to continue here. I apologize for that.
Unidentified flying object, a saucer-shaped or cigar-shaped vehicle on the ground of their home, emanating bright lights, or they may be taken by a small craft up into the sky to a kind of mothership, which they see very clearly. So many of them actually see the UFOs that and the insides are so uniformly described with rounded, curved walls and complicated instrument panels that it's become clear that it's some kind of craft in the sky, which they would naturally call a spacecraft.
I think people would naturally draw that inference, but to me, it's still an inference. I think you might agree. We don't really know exactly what these things are.
Yeah, and it has been suggested that perhaps these are not actually aliens, but future Earthlings in time travel ships or devices. But it does seem that most people go straight to the alien explanation.
Fair enough. I mean, you could have, as we do have, very. I mean, this gets really into the way of how we know anything, but or our use of language. But we call something which is seen in the sky and which seems to be moving from one place to another, we call it a spacecraft. Now,
I agree, Chris.
Again, this has to do with where our own technology has come to. It could be created as a virtual reality and appears similar to what we already know as airplane or a certain type of aerospace vehicle. So we call it a spacecraft.
I agree, Patty.
But again, you know, if you want to get down to the very core of the way language structures reality for us, you could even question whether they're spacecraft.
Yeah, and I do question. I think it's not exactly clear what they are, just as I think it's not exactly clear that they're aliens. Could this just as easily be interdimensional beings that are somehow able to shift between their dimension and our own somehow, blurring the lines of reality for many who have these experiences?
Isn't it the case that you've described in your book cases that were reported, let's say 100 years ago, back in the 19th century, of people who talked about airships?
Well, the articles there by Jerome Clark, who's been a student of the UFO phenomenon for many years, and he went back and looked into the newspaper accounts of the airship craze of the last decade of the 19th century, and many of those vehicles would look kind of like balloons or look like the technology of the time. But he went further than that. He actually did an exhaustive search of all of the photographs he could find and the descriptions, and lo and behold, many of them did appear very much like the current modern day UFO. But
yeah, and really, I think it depends on who you ask about that. After all, there were people reporting somewhat similar experiences to the modern alien abduction experiences, but their perception was that it was demonic or angelic, the beings that they experienced. So I've often wondered if these people are having these experiences, but what they are, whether demonic, alien, interdimensional, or alien, is they're reaching those conclusions through a cultural lens.
The people of the time did not have in our culture the technological knowledge to actually see them as what they were. So he's concluded that these were probably UFOs, not so different from what we're seeing now, but our perceptual
Yeah.
development hadn't reached the point where they could be perceived the way we now can see things in the sky more or less as we at least think they are.
Right.
And again, you're raising the question whether even that's actual or constructed reality.
Well, or we could take this in so many different directions. Let's go back further into the past, because the accounts don't just begin even in the 19th century, do they?
Yeah, it's very interesting that there is substantial and supportive evidence of similar experiences that humans have had, some would say, for thousands of years.
Well, again, if you go back into the early times, Ezekiel's wheel, which is now many UFOs, I think that was a UFO, or chariots seen in the sky, or you go back to the ferries that kidnap people in Ireland and other countries. There is some similarities, but you're dealing there with oral traditions, and it's an easy leap of mind to say, well, we've had this going on all through the centuries and through the millennia even. The problem with that is the methods of knowing then were so different. You need to compare a phenomenon, you have to use more or less the same investigative method, and our methods now, as well as, of course, our perceptual capabilities are so different.
Yeah, and that's very true. I mean, some people who experienced these things before the modern age would tell their priest about them, and their priest would inform their belief in what the encounter or experience was about. Much like I mentioned, growing up Catholic, the priests and nuns believed that Whitley Strieber was not seeing aliens, he was seeing demons, and he was being deceived into believing that what he was seeing was aliens from another planet, when it was in fact demonic entities.
For example, just take the matter of clinical study. The people that were reporting those experiences weren't being studied clinically. Now we have a tradition of when somebody's had an unusual experience or something that doesn't fit, or you want to investigate, you talk to that person in great detail, you get other witnesses, what they've seen. So we have a kind of body of investigative tradition now that can document what's going on. So from that point of view, this appears to have some distinct features.
Yeah, and I've always had a problem, however, with people who equate people telling similar stories with proof. Just because people are telling similar stories, to me, does not indicate that they're all telling the truth. And many of these researchers I have seen have sort of used that as a form of proof. And Patty Wilhelm is here and says, easy for folks, even the very educated, to fall down the rabbit hole. I absolutely agree. But I've always been fascinated with very, very educated people who believe that these are real and valid experiences, and not just stories or imaginings or sleep paralysis or something else. That's probably one of the things that keeps me interested. Obviously, this man is incredibly much more educated than me, and the fact that he's so educated and still believes it, kind of changes my view. But I understand, just because a PhD wrote it down, it must be true. Yeah, I guess that, people are big, though, on experts, right? The expert believes that it's true. So we're going to move on to our next candidate, which would be another famous researcher of alien abduction phenomenon. And we're going to save the best for last, however. Well, the best video, I should say. Okay. So our next famous, well-known researcher into the alien abduction phenomenon, and I hate to keep harping on the point, but I will mention again that all of these people who are the most well-known alien abduction researchers are also the people that profit the most from perpetuating the stories, the mythology, and the interest in the subject. Our next person is David Jacobs. He was an American historian and a retired associate professor at Temple University, right near where I grew up. He's known for his research on the phenomenon of alien abduction. Jacobs began his research into alien abduction in the 1970s, and over the course of his career, he interviewed hundreds of individuals who claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrial beings. And I find it very fascinating that each of these researchers, they're not interviewing the same hundreds of people. They each have found hundreds of people on their own. I'm sure there might be some crossover, but many of them are interviewing. Each of these three famous, well-known alien abduction researchers have all interviewed hundreds of people telling these stories. And that makes me wonder, like, how many people are having these experiences. It's got to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people for them to so easily be able to continually interview people who have been abducted, apparently, or claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrial beings. Jacobs' findings were detailed in several books, including The UFO Controversy in America in 1975, The Threat, The Secret Agenda, What the Aliens Really Want, and How They Plan to Get It in 1998. Jacobs' research focuses on the examination of the abduction phenomenon and its implications for human society. He's conducted extensive interviews with his subjects, and again, we come back to hypnosis. Jacobs also uses hypnosis and other techniques to help them remember details of their experiences. He also analyzed and compared the abduction experiences of the subject with the goal of understanding the motivations and goals of the aliens. One of the main ideas that Jacobs proposed is that the abduction phenomenon is a form of long-term, systematic breeding program conducted by extraterrestrial beings. And by the way, David Jacobs' original book in 1975 was much more science-based and grounded in reality. But it would appear, as he continued to work more UFO conferences and continue his research, his claims got more and more grand. And lately, you will find him claiming that there are alien hybrids all over the world walking right among us, and we wouldn't know that they're alien hybrids, and there's some secret plan to take over Earth by slowly breeding alien human hybrids and taking over Earth sort of stealthily. It gets really, really out there the longer you listen to Mr. Jacobs. One of the main ideas he proposed is this systematic breeding program. He argues that aliens are genetically altering humans to create a hybrid species that will be more amenable to their agenda, and that the aliens' ultimate goal is to take over Earth and replace humans with their alien-human hybrid, a new species of humans that is a mix of their DNA and our own. Jacobs' work, as you can well imagine, has been met with a lot of criticism from the scientific community, who argue his theories lack any evidence and his work is very unscientific. Some have also pointed out that Jacobs' ideas have an air of paranoia, and that there are explanations for the phenomenon, again, such as sleep disorders or psychological conditions. Still, however, in the field of ufology and in circles of people interested in aliens, Jacobs' work remains a valuable contribution to the field of alien abduction research. His books continue to be widely read and referenced. He does interviews with many popular shows that cover these subjects, and he continues to present his ideas at UFO conferences and lectures, and his research continues to be studied and debated. It's interesting, however, that recently Mr. Jacobs had some controversies surrounding him. It would appear that Mr. Jacobs was asking a female alien abduction victim to send him panties, and that became quite a source of controversy. We did a whole joke show on it called PhD Pantygate. Believers or supporters of Jacobs claimed that he needed the panties for the scientific research or to check them for alien spooge. That's right. He had to check those panties to see if there was alien spooge or DNA on the panties. But people very critical of him essentially called Mr. Jacobs a sex creeper who liked to sniff panties. of females. Take from that what you will. And I have a video to share as well. We'll just take a sampling of each of these people. Dr. David Jacobs on the alien. His stuff is really, really out there. Essentially, Mr. Jacobs is claiming that all these people are being taken so that the aliens can steal genetic material, including ova, eggs, uteruses even, and sperm from men. And some of his stories get very sexual in nature, including that they will take a male victim and then send in some alien hybrids that look close enough to human to extract the sperm from him, right? They got to extract the guy's sperm. So they send in a sexy alien hybrid chick that's naked, and it gets very sexual and a little creepy and disturbing, right? Especially when you consider he was asking female abduction victims for their panties and things. When you couple that with his often very sexualized stories, it's a little disturbing. And so he essentially claims that every alien abduction is to get genetic material so that the aliens can make more hybrids, and that they now have alien hybrids that are living among us. And you wouldn't be able to spot them because they look so close to human. I think this is a bridge too far for me. And though I remember somewhere along the lines, probably in the 90s, I got his 1975 book and enjoyed it. That was a little more grounded in reality, more about the experiences. As time went on, his claims became grander and grander. And now he wants everybody to believe that there is a entire breeding program, and that's what all these abductions are about. All right, so we're going to cite fair use, and we'll listen to some of Mr. Jacobs' theories. He says, in the past, I was completely convinced that hybrids were not walking around with us. That notion was silly and evidence-free. In recent years, however, I have found mounting evidence that has forced me to change my mind. And to be clear, his mounting evidence is people telling him stories. He doesn't have evidence. He has stories people told him. He goes on to say, I now believe it might very well be possible that hybrids are integrating into society. This must be an old video, because now he says it's definitely happening, and therefore actually walking around here. I feel somewhat foolish saying this, but I have to go where the evidence leads me, and alas, it has led me to this position. And again, his evidence is people telling him stories. He doesn't have any physical evidence at all. Sorry, get this queued up. And here's a scene from a supposed alien abduction. Of course, there are always drawings or computer-generated graphic. We never get a real picture.
I began to think that the process of hybridization, which I had envisioned before as primarily taking sperm and eggs and then altering the embryo or the zygote, and then leading to this sort of a bell-shaped curve of part of them look alien, part of them look human, most of them look in the middle. That was probably true, but not the whole story. And then I began to realize that what they were doing is that they were adding DNA from hybrids to the sperm and egg, and they were getting a skewed bell-shaped curve that was looking more and more like humans. And if you do this enough time, you just get beings who look more and more human-like, more and more. You get a refining of the species in a sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting that many people do tell stories of feeling like they are getting their sperm extracted or their eggs extracted during these alien experiences. So I guess it's not a giant leap to think that they're doing something with those genetic materials. I guess the problem that I've always had with Mr. Jacobs is that his only evidence is, dude, trust me, somebody told me this. And I don't think that's enough to form such a fantastical claim, you know?
And that apparently is what has been happening. Although how the process, I'm still a little bit unclear of the process, and there were some very pointed questions asked me about this once by a person who knew what he was talking about that I couldn't answer. And so I don't know all the medical procedures that occur here in that sense. But I do know that there is a spectrum of hybrids who look mainly alien and look mainly human, and some look really, really human.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, if you were to ask Mr. Jacobs, how come we can't tell these hybrids are walking among us? It seems to me to be a very convenient excuse that, well, they look entirely human. And also, I just wonder from an evolutionary biology perspective, you know, if these aliens came here from a whole different star system, they might have different evolutionary process. They might not even be carbon based. There's some evidence to suggest that there might be life based on other elements like silicon or, you know, I don't know, other elements. Why? It's just a stretch to me to say, yeah, we're genetically compatible and they're able to hybridize with us. If we look to nature, things have to be incredibly close to be able to interbreed or reproduce. You know, you can get a lion and a tiger. Well, they're both big cats, and you can get a liger, but you can't get a tiger and a person. You can't get, you know, you can't even, to the best of my knowledge, even though there's been some crazy experiments into it, and we did a show on this, the human-Z, you can't even get a chimpanzee and human hybrid to work, and we're 98% genetically compatible. So what are the odds that we're 100% genetically compatible with an alien species from another star system? But these are inconvenient facts. They don't help you. Bringing up these questions don't help these people sell the stories, so they never really talk about that. But if you talk to, you know, a medical doctor or an evolutionary biologist or somebody familiar with, you know, reproduction, they'll tell you that species have to be incredibly genetically compatible in order to create hybrids. But Mr. Jacobs would have us believe that some alien beings that may be, for all we know, not mammals, but reptiles or, I don't know, insectoid in nature are somehow still able to create hybrids along with us. It's just a stretch to me.
Then people would begin to describe to me how they would be taken into a room. These are abductees, and their attention would be directed to a screen-like device. They all look up at the screen, and the person will say, and I've written a couple of these kinds of events up, although I heard many of them. The person will see a picnic, for example. And at the picnic, there'll be people who are playing ball and who are grilling and who are standing around talking this and that. And they'll hear in their mind's eye, their mind's ear, can you tell the difference between you and us?
Yeah, and it's very, very common that people during these abduction experiences are shown screens or other viewing devices and ask questions. It's a pretty common occurrence, I've noticed.
And the person will look carefully at the screen and say, no. Everybody looks the same to me, you know. And they'll say, see, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that excellent? Soon we will all be together. Soon we will be here and we will all be living together. Isn't that wonderful? Or they will see, here's another case.
Yeah, interesting. So essentially, they want to use humans to check, like, how good is our alien hybrids? How good do they look? Can you tell the difference? Very strange.
It's a group shot of all sorts of people, like a high school shot of other class on steps, you know, that sort of thing. And they'll say, can you pick out us among you here? And the person will look and try to figure it out and say, no, I can't. And they'll say, see, isn't that wonderful? Soon we will all be together. And I began to hear this a lot by people who were not aware of anybody else's testimony or anything like that, or who were just saying that, and who didn't really understand the meaning of what it was either.
That is very strange. If people, as I said, from different backgrounds and things would be telling that specific story. But what are the odds that he finds these people that are having the exact or incredibly similar experiences to this, that just so happen out of every person on earth to find him to both tell their stories to? And by the way, Mr. Jacobs keeps most of his sources, or so-called sources, anonymous. So no one else can verify that they even exist, to the best of my knowledge and recollection, or no one else can interview them and fact check him and say, did you tell him that you saw a screen and they were asking you to check if you could tell which one was the alien? We don't get to fact check him ever. I think that's a little too convenient.
And then people would say, then these beings would tell them soon there was going to be a big change. There'll be a big change, and you're going to be a very important part of the change. And, you're going to have a job to do, and you'll be very pleased to do it. And to the abductees who don't know what they're talking about. But this will happen soon. Everything's going to happen soon. It's going to be happening soon. No, that's the change. We're going to have a change. The change is coming soon. Well, I began, when you hear things for the first time, you always put it on the back burner waiting for validation from other people who are unaware of the testimony.
And here it comes again. David Jacobs is one of the alien abduction researchers who seems to claim or make the case that if separate people tell him the same story, both stories must be true. And again, I have a problem with that. That's a stretch, calling that evidence. Is it an interesting thing that multiple people are telling you similar stories? Sure. But we've talked about it here before, and I hate to call them wackadoos, but for the purposes of this, I will. If one wackadoo tells the same story that another wackadoo tells, it doesn't mean that both wackadoos are telling the truth. And we see this acceptance of this philosophy, not just in alien abduction research, but in secret space program research and super soldier research. Many of these so-called researchers, by the way, all of which are profiting from their so-called research, let's be very clear on that, they all seem to claim that because two separate people told them a similar or the same story, both must be telling the truth. And I don't believe that that is the case.
Well, so the first few times I heard this, you just blow it off. You just think, well, I'll wait. If I never hear it again, there is no change, But I began to hear it over and over again from a wide variety of people. Something was happening in the future. Some change was going to happen. They had some role in the future. This was going to happen. They began to convince me.
I just want to mention, for purposes of truth and transparency, I live very close to Mr. Jacobs, and I have asked him for interviews probably 5 times at least. And I believe in one of those exchanges, he said, well, what kind of questions did you have? And I said, I'd like to see your research. I'd like to speak to these people who you're saying are telling you the same story. After that, he ghosted me. He would not respond to any messages. So I sort of became convinced that he's using sources that he will not share. Why? I will agree to a non-disclosure agreement. I won't violate any trust. I won't, blast their names and addresses on the internet, but I want to speak to them and verify that the things that you are saying actually occurred and people really told you that. Suddenly, he doesn't want any part of an interview. I find that incredibly suspicious. If what you're saying is true, why not allow me or another competent researcher to interview these people and sort of check his claims? But again, I don't think that helps when you're trying to sell books, to question the narratives.
It's me. because the first time I heard it, it came out of the blue, and the second time I heard it, it came out of the blue. I mean, it sounded like I was leading him to it. I didn't even believe it had happened in the first place. So because you have to wait for confirmation. So you don't. It's not like I'm leading people. It's like they're leading me. I instituted controls for that eventually, which I can tell you about if you want. They're fun, kind of fun controls, but just to show you how that doesn't work the way people think it works. But the point is that.
So again, all of these separate people told him the same stories. Therefore, the story must be true. I think that's incredibly suspicious, and the fact that he would not, he won't release the names of any of these people he claims to be getting the stories from. And again, I'm not claiming that he is just making up these stories, but if you had real sources that were telling you these things, why not share them with other competent researchers? It seems very suspicious to me that he will not do that. And his books are largely filled with pseudonyms, anonymous sources, and more. It's the dude, trust me, somebody told me school of research. And I find that problematic. Equally problematic with Mr. Jacobs is that he's a history professor. And suddenly he's an expert in hypnotic regression as well, and extracting memories from people that were repressed that they had no idea about. Suddenly he starts his hypnotic regressions and they're remembering all kinds of alien experiences. I find that extremely dramatic. All of these UFO abduction researchers using hypnotic techniques, or in some cases full-on hypnotic regressions to recover lost memories. And despite the benefits that I think hypnosis certainly has a great deal of benefits clinically and for different things, especially in the cases of criminal investigations. Did you know that there have been many cold case crimes that have been solved because, let's say, for example, somebody saw a license plate, but they only remembered 2 digits? A qualified hypnotherapist or hypnotic regression specialist will put that person under hypnosis and get the rest of that license plate. Suddenly the police have their suspect and the case is solved. That's certainly a wonderful use of recovering memories from hypnotic regression. But when it gets into this, people suddenly remembering, all kinds of experiences with aliens. And I have listened to some of Mr. Jacobs, specifically hypnotic regressions, seem to be very leading questions like, where did the alien take you? What did the alien do to you? Well, why would you even say alien? That's a leading question by itself. I'm very suspicious of Mr. Jacobs. Now we get to one of the other original people, and that would be Bud Hopkins, who you may recall was also married to Leslie Kean, famous for that 2016 article. And these people, both Leslie Kean and Bud Hopkins, are sort of true believers in many things, including near-death experiences, past lives, aliens, demons, ghosts, poltergeists, the works. But Bud Hopkins was an American artist and author who became one of the most well-known and respected researchers in the field of alien abduction. Hopkins began his research on alien abduction in the early 1980s, and over the course of his career, like our previous 2 experts, he interviewed hundreds of individuals who claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrial beings. His research and findings were detailed in several books, including Intruders, The Incredible Visitation at Copley Woods, that was from 1987, that book, and Missing Time, a documented study of UFO abductions in 1981. Both, especially Missing Time, is sort of a classic in the genre of alien abduction stories. And Missing Time, I think, had a big cultural impact because after the book Missing Time, many of these experiencers of this alien abduction phenomenon began to talk about they were missing time. And it leads me to wonder which came first, the book Missing Time and the description of missing time in that book, which some might say harkens back to the Betty and Barney Hill case, where they claimed that they were missing time. And he also wrote Missing Time, a documented study of UFO abductions. That was the 1981 book. Hopkins' research focused on the phenomenon of alien abductions and the psychological and physical effects that it had on the individuals who claimed to have experienced it. He conducted extensive interviews with his subjects, including having a support group hosted at his home. He used hypnosis and other techniques to help them remember details of their experiences. So again, we get to hypnosis. He also documented the evidence that many of his subjects reported, such as scars, burns, and other marks on their bodies, that Hopkins attributed to their alien abduction experiences. One of Hopkins' most notable contributions to the field of alien abduction research was his development of the screen memory theory. He proposed that the memories of alien abduction are often repressed and replaced with seemingly benign memories, such as memories of a dream or a childhood event. By using hypnosis, Hopkins was able to help his subject access those repressed memories and provide more detailed accounts of their abduction experiences. So again, we see the use of hypnosis. Oh, you don't remember what happened? Let me hypnotize you. And suddenly people are remembering more details of aliens and their abduction experience. Despite his research and contributions to the field, Hopkins' work is met with skepticism. Critics argue his methods, like some of the others, is unscientific, his findings not adequately supported by real or physical evidence, and amount to just stories and memories recovered during hypnosis sessions. Others have suggested that the experience reported by Hopkins were the results of neurological, psychological, or sleep disorders. I will say that Hopkins' work and his books have been praised by many in the field of ufology. Many see his research as a valuable contribution to understanding the entire phenomenon. And his books continue to be widely read, debated, talked about, and referenced in this field of study. I believe that it's also important to realize that we'll talk about a few things. When it comes to Bud Hopkins especially, I think that objectivity is an important thing. And it would appear to me, at least as an outsider looking in, that all of these researchers, especially Bud Hopkins, lost their objectivity. They seem to have belief that these people are actually being abducted by aliens, and maybe that pre-existing belief informs the outcome of their so-called research is very problematic for me. Bud Hopkins especially had a support group in his home where he would meet with alien abduction victims very frequently. Many of them became his very close friends, his associates, fellow researchers into the field would visit him at his home. There with Leslie Kean, he spent a great deal of time with many of these people, became incredibly friendly with many of them. And I, for one, found that problematic. If you're a researcher, I don't think hanging out and palling around with your research subjects all the time will create objective research into their stories or their so-called evidence. Also, it appears to me that Mr. Hopkins had a lot of reaching insofar as what he called evidence. And there's an excellent video that I found. One second here. We're going to, let me put my fair use banner back up. And we're going to see some of his research. And again, I have sort of a problem with some of the things revealed in this video. If you're trying to research a subject, I don't think it's a good idea to socialize and hang out with the people that you're using for so-called witnesses. He became very, very close to many of them. So we're going to cite fair use. This is a transformative work. We're educating the public. We'll be discussing this with the members of the live chat. I'll be putting your comments and questions on the screen, further making it a transformative work. This is covered under fair use. This is fair use. And by the way, I did see, thank you so much. I saw some super chats. I'm sorry, during these longer presentations, I try to focus as much as I can so we could get through it. We will read. This is the last part of our presentation, and then we'll read every single super chat. Thank every single supporter. Thank you all. This is from Carol Rainey, and this is excellent work. This is about research methods used by leading
really what I
researchers.
Want to do is have you go through some
Okay.
of that material as it comes out.
Okay. Right.
And,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
it's
Do I look at you or into the camera?
No.
Yeah, no objectivity. I would tend to
Today was
agree.
a shoot that I was excited to finally be doing.
Okay.
Bud had offered to go on camera for the first time with evidence that he believed clearly demonstrated the reality of the alien abduction phenomenon.
Okay. Over the years, I've been collecting symbols, drawings that I have people make when they say that they remember having seen some kind of notational system, symbols or whatever, inside the craft on some surface or other.
So he's collecting samples of so-called writing, symbols, or some would say hieroglyphics that people saw during their abduction experience aboard the spacecraft, etc. And he had been collecting this from different subjects. But remember, he has a research group where they all pal around and hang out together, a support group, I should say.
There, that looks like somebody's been writing on it.
A board.
Uh-huh.
Does it have symbols, letters, numbers? What does it look like to you?
And I make them draw these for me afterwards. I have kept them absolutely secret. The reason that I have never reproduced these in any source or never presented them publicly until this moment is because it's always been something that I could hold back along with many other details.
Yeah, and here we see an example that was just used by Corey Good. Well, I give a fake name so that when people approach me, if they give me the correct terminology, I will know that they had a real experiences, were really part of the program. Here, he's using a very similar methodology, claiming that he holds back. He doesn't tell people about that. But remember, these people are all in an alien abduction support group at his home, hanging out together. So what are the chances they weren't talking about these things amongst themselves, even without his knowledge or consent?
To be able to test the veracity of people who come forward. It's an old police technique. To look at this little book, which I put together a number of years ago. Very crucially, this was one of the early sets I got in 1983 from Debbie Jordan, who I wrote about in Intruders. Now, she said they were arranged vertically like this. She felt that they were read downward. She didn't know why. She has no idea what they mean. This woman from Canada made this drawing. She felt that this was exactly what she had seen inside a ship, inside a UFO during.
Now, you know, the other thing that struck me when I saw this is these are scribbles on a page. I mean, they're vaguely or somewhat similar, right? Okay. And again, this is sort of like if two people are telling me the same or similar story, that means that everything they're telling me is true. In this case, because people are showing him similar symbols, he believes that they are all telling him the truth about their abduction experience, and these symbols obviously have to be alien writing of some sort.
An abduction. And she has no idea, as none of these people do, what any of this means. Nobody, and that's an item, of course, of credibility in their favor, that they're not trying to interpret it and say this is a star map or this is a whatever. So she said that this was precisely what she saw. And you can see from the way these begin to mass out on a page how similar they are. This is another New York City abductee who separated them out. Another woman who was an artist made this drawing.
I'll give them this. They're similar. They're definitely similar in appearance.
Very, very quickly. She drew it on a large scale, but when reduced, they all end up looking extremely similar.
And you notice that he mentioned that he messed with the scale of them to make them more similar. I would be interested in interviewing the original people and getting some idea of the difference in scale.
Now this over here is Linda's.
I saw the symbols up in the craft. Oh, that was scary.
Why is that scary?
Because that was confirmation for what I'd seen up in the craft. I wasn't the only one that saw these symbols.
And when she drew it for me, after a hypnosis session, she remembered seeing these.
Again, after a hypnosis session, I would be interested in hearing that hypnosis session and verifying there were no leading questions. Did he bring up the subject of symbols? Did you see writing? Did you see symbols? Can you draw them for me? That would be an extremely leading question.
She started drawing here and she went down the page trying to remember exactly what they look like. She said this wasn't exactly right. She finally got down here. When she put this dot in, she thought, yeah, that's the closest of these curves to what the thing actually looked like that she saw.
The big question to me is, what does this signify?
And here's where we get to, this means that this is proof.
Now, Linda, in this particular case, the only way that she can be attacked, the case can be attacked, is, of course, if people say she's a liar, a hoaxer, she's hired all these people. Every one of these people is an actress or actor that she's hired. She's trained her son, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if that's the case, Linda came up with symbols here that are virtually identical to the symbols of many, 30, 40, 50 other people.
And again, I would really like to interview those 30 or 40 people and verify all of these claims. I'm sorry, but the Trust Me Dude School of Research, where are their names, addresses, times interviewed? Where are their specific recollections of these symbols and the symbology? I'd also be interested in having a linguist or a symbologist look at these and see if they can glean some meaning out of them.
Now that establishes, as far as I'm concerned, her credibility. This has never, until this moment, been made public.
And again, one woman gave him drawings that he claims 30 or 40 other people showed him something very similar. And as described, that these were writings or symbols on the spacecraft. Now, if true, yeah, that's pretty compelling, but again, it's that tantalizing maybe evidence. If indeed 40 people that never spoke to each other, never communicated, never shared, let's just call it shop talk about their experiences, were all giving him very, very similar symbols, well, yeah, but where's the verification of those 40 other people? And we saw, looked to me like 5 or 6 examples in his binder. How do we know that 40 people all drew nearly the exact same thing? Or was it just vaguely similar? And he just collected or cherry-picked the very best examples of people showing him similar symbols. That's what I believe is happening here, but you're free to form your own opinion. But as we will see, I think this whole line of this is the proof or this is the evidence falls apart very quickly under scrutiny.
Right away, that was a claim that made me uneasy. I'd seen him show these symbols to dozens of people. Any one of them might have disseminated the confidential data.
Yeah, so he's saying he never showed them to anybody. She's watching him show them to everybody. That's kind of a problem. a real discrepancy in his claims.
I knew that journalists had seen them, television producers, other UFO researchers, and
And of course, he's sharing these symbols around with other alien abduction researchers here.
It's important he'd shown the symbols to abductees in his support groups. In the early 1990s, Linda Cortila's dramatic case was unfolding, and support groups met often at Bud's house. Their abductees shared their experiences with each other, and they made friends who understood them. These were close and very social bonds. Bud had also been quite close to several of the abductees. I have no way to know if knowledge of the symbols had been communicated between people who identified themselves as abductees.
Yeah, well, it would appear to me to be quite obvious that if these people are hanging out together in an alien abduction support group constantly, and she witnessed him showing those symbols around to other researchers, television reporters, documentary film producers, ufology researchers, other alien abduction researchers, that these symbols became common knowledge among people with an interest in the subject. So it's very problematic. Chain of custody, that's what we have here. We have a problem of chain of custody. In other words, if Mr. Hopkins had independently interviewed 40 different people from all different walks of life, from all around the world, from different religious backgrounds, ages, educational levels, etc., who were claiming alien abduction experiences, and each of them never interacted with each other and drew the exact same symbols, then yes, there would be some evidentiary value. But this really, trust me, chain of custody, oh, I never showed them to anybody. This documentary film producer is witnessing him showing them to people. And it's also on record that these things were shared around among researchers.
The point is that the data, the symbols themselves, were not strictly controlled and kept free of possible collusion.
At this point, since so many people have drawn these things recently, after Linda's was one of the very early ones, but because so many people have drawn them for me, I have no way of absolutely controlling the fact that one or the other of them might not publish these in a book or an article that they write someplace.
On a popular internet forum.
And here's where it becomes really problematic. Remember, he claimed that he strictly controlled these things first. He says, well, I have no way of knowing if other people might have shared these things. And here we find a virtual record that these things were out there among early internet forums.
A journalist and one of Bud's abductees discussed the impact that the symbols first had on them. The journalist was staggered by the images at first, then began to fault the methodology. The researcher himself, he suggested, might have influenced the subject by offering subtle cues to people who all wanted very much to please him.
Yeah, so there's no chain of custody. There's no strict controls here. It's very, very sloppy work from a research perspective to claim that this is evidence or proof when you cannot indeed verify that one person showing you these things didn't see it on an internet forum, see it in a documentary, see it in another book, talk about it at a support group, or talk about those things or hear about them from another researcher interviewing them.
And then Bud told me that they were symbols that several other abductees have drawn, and they were all of one particular symbol that I drew. They were all identical.
Doesn't this seem like an awfully fragile thread upon which to hang a very large claim?
If this were the only thread to hang the UFO evidence upon, of course it would be. It would be quite surprising. But
yeah, I would think it's an incredibly fragile thread here.
That's the only thing, but it's only just one more tiny detail that people are including in their accounts which replicate thousands of other cases in detail after detail after detail, all apart from the eyewitness accounts and the physical evidence.
Where is the physical evidence? He claims that people who have bruises or marks on their body is physical evidence. Again, that's very problematic. And again, he comes back to the same argument that many of these researchers have made, and that is that if multiple people tell me the same story, that's proof that these stories are all true. And again, to me, that's a bridge too far.
So not everybody sees these things, but those who do always see the same kinds of symbols.
And I would argue that that is entirely false. I am aware of substantial and supportive evidence of people drawing entirely different so-called writing or symbols, and I have several examples of that. So he's making an absolutist statement here that everybody who sees symbols draws the same ones. No, that's nonsense.
But was that true? Sure, I was amazed to see this collection of symbols for the first time. So alike, drawn by so many different people. It certainly seems to be evidence of alien abduction. But that's only if you don't know how the alleged evidence came into being. Some of the symbols came to bud in the mail. After our book, Sight Unseen, came out, people also started sending me drawings of symbols they'd seen inside the craft. But most were drawn directly after hypnosis by the abductees whom Bud worked with and knew well.
Yeah, so again, he has a very close personal relationship with these people. He's milking them for stories to sell. Some would say tell. This is very problematic.
Feeling better. They've got what? Just tell me very clearly.
A needle.
A needle. Uh-huh.
Over the years, I'd seen hundreds of symbols from abductees that weren't anything like those in the book.
So there we have verification that he's making completely false statements, claiming that all alien abduction victims see these symbols. That's not the case. This researcher has seen hundreds of symbols that bears little or no resemblance to these. This is the problem, people claiming shaky evidence, so-called evidence, is a real problem. And again, it's the trust me, dude, school of research.
Some were entire alphabets of an alien written language.
And here we see some examples proving that he was false in his absolutist statement that everybody sees the same thing. Here are examples. People are seeing all kinds of different things.
Well, kind of tangled up in blue. So why would someone considered ethical and honest make the claims Bud was making?
I have kept them absolutely secret. This has never, until this moment, been made public. So not everybody sees these things, but those who do always see the same kinds of symbols.
Well, no,
Yeah,
they
that's
don't.
a little bit of a problem.
Show us what's in the box, please.
This is embarrassing for him. This is actually embarrassing for him. In the same interview, he makes multiple conflicting statements about the custody or chain of evidence. This is just embarrassing.
You see, what I was thinking was to, well, just talk to me about them as you do it. What
No.
is it that you have?
No, I want to stack the deck here.
He's saying he wants to stack the deck. And this researcher says, I'd seen many symbols over the years that were not like the ones that Bud included in his so-called evidence book. So extremely problematic so-called evidence, which falls apart under the least little bit of scrutiny by a real researcher.
Here are symbols drawn by an abductee who worked with Roger Lear.
Totally different. Yeah. And how come only his subjects are seeing the exact same symbols? And if you look into the symbols shown to other researchers, they're completely and totally different. That right there is a huge red flag that he's using really, really shoddy, some would say false efforts to generate this so-called evidence.
Here are a few of the symbols drawn by Ray Fowler's subject, Becky Andreasen. To my eye, the symbols from people working with different abduction researchers look nothing like the ones in Bud's scrapbook.
Now, it's important to realize that these are tracings of the exact drawing that the person made in the first place. I have Xeroxed each of the preceding ones and brought them to scale so they're the same size. So as we look through this, we can see.
So he's manipulating the data to draw a conclusion.
How they all compare.
But why trace people's drawings? Why not put the original sketches on the page and let viewers and other researchers decide if the similarities were significant? Most scientists wouldn't view this as a collection of raw data at all. They'd see it as the creation of an artist who had traced over each original symbol in a possibly unconscious effort to make them seem more alike than they actually were.
Yeah, and there also could be significant, look at the significant changes from the original thing that he was shown to what he presents as what they showed him. This is manipulation of data, pure and simple. He is manipulating the data to fit an already drawn conclusion and to support an already drawn conclusion. This is not science, this is garbage.
If the UFO phenomenon is occurring, as the report suggests, it's the most important event in human history.
Bud had taken on a very difficult task: to explain the abductees' experience to a world that didn't believe them. But was he intentionally making false claims? It gradually dawned on me that Bud was doing research the way he did art. In the abduction reports he selected, and in the symbols he pulled out of the box, Bud was always looking for a pattern.
Yeah, and it's easy to see that artists look for patterns in nature. You know, if you're going to paint a landscape, you look for the way the light hits certain trees or, you know, hits the water, and you reproduce that. And again, you know, I don't want to speak too badly about this guy. It seemed like his heart was in the right place and he had a true and sincere belief in these people telling these stories. But this is cherry-picked, manufactured so-called evidence. And I would put evidence in quotes. This is not evidence.
Finding a strong
This is manufacturing evidence to sell a book.
pattern or a similarity between people making abduction reports would give all of them coherence and meaning. It was creating order out of chaos, which is what artists do so beautifully. It's just not quite how researchers go about acquiring information.
Yeah, and that's it for this. So, and also a question that I would certainly have is, what is his qualifications to do hypnotic regressions on people? He's an artist. He doesn't have training in psychology or some other relevant field that would aid him in these interviews and these hypnotic regressions. All of this is very, very problematic. Very, very problematic. Yes, Amy Collins says his own research was pareidolia on a grand scale. I absolutely agree with you. He's seeing patterns because he wants to. He wants to make sense out of chaos, and don't we all? And, you know, to close, I would say that a lot of these stories and these research, this so-called research, is a lot of pareidolia on a grand scale. Well, multiple people told me this, therefore they're all telling the truth. That's false equivocation for sure, and a giant leap to make. I've had people tell me similar stories. It doesn't mean that each of them were telling me the truth about their experiences. Or if I wanted to create a case for that, I too could cherry pick from the 10 or 20 people, probably more like 20 people that I've personally spoken to and interviewed about their so-called abduction experience. we're left at a real impasse. So let me know what you think in the comments. Is there something to this? Are these people having real alien abduction experiences or something else? And what do we think about the profiteering? I keep coming back to this because it's important. These people, Bud Hopkins, John Mack, David Jacobs, all made a great deal of money. In fact, it became their full-time jobs to write these books, talk at conferences, do interviews about alien abductions. It became a lucrative full-time job for them. So do we think that people who have a huge financial motive would not fudge the data a little bit or cherry pick the data to support the conclusions that they want to draw so that they will have something to sell you? I still am on the fence on this one. I find this incredibly problematic. What I see from the major famous abduction cases, pardon me, it got blurry like Bigfoot there. What I see from these three most famous abduction experiences is an awful lot of profit-driven motives. What I see from the researchers is an awful lot of profit-driven motives. Though I will say that I have spoken to many people who had so-called abduction experiences that did not want to be named, did not want to profit, did not want to try to cash in. And those people I found more credible. But these people who make it their full-time job to talk about alien abductions certainly have a profit motive, in my opinion, a very strong profit motive, because after all, they're making literally millions of dollars for some of these people to talk about these things and to essentially say that these things are real and true. And, when it comes to the money, it becomes problematic for me because instantly I, like perhaps many people, start to think maybe these people are just out to make a buck, right? Though, again, I've talked to people that don't want never tried to cash in. So I'm gonna share my screen here, and we are gonna thank each of you generous supporters. I apologize for missing them. Tonight we had JC with a kind and generous $4.99 super chat. JC says, praise the cash. Absolutely. Mazer Rage 86 asks, thoughts on Terry Lovelace, see his implant x-ray. Yeah, I'm on the fence about implants as well, Mazer Rage, but maybe I'll do a separate deep dive and show just into that specific case. We've done a show on alien implants in the past. I talked to a person named Stephen Colburn who worked for Roger Lear, and I got to say he was very convincing, but the data doesn't really support the claims being made. And thanks, Debbie from SAC, for a kind and generous super sticker, $5 purchase. Now, going forward, I will be happy to monitor the live chat. We're going to take questions and comments from the live chat. And any more of the super chats or super stickers or PayPal, we'll check that as well right now. I will share them on the screen and thank you right on screen. I apologize. Sometimes during these, I got to find a better way to do this. I understand people would prefer that I share it on the screen. We do our best to do that. We want to thank Thomas for a kind and generous PayPal, $5 PayPal pledge. And Thomas says, been gone for a while after a car accident. So sorry to hear that. Glad to see you're still doing good work and have in fact grown and are really focusing more on facts and less on emotion. I'm enjoying it and learning. And that is Valacor. Thank you, Valacor, for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show. We want to thank each and every one of you kind and generous benefactors, the people who sent all you people who sent super chats and super stickers, you PayPal pledgers, you Patreon supporters, and Twitch subscribers now, and PayPal donators, and YouTube channel members. Thank you all for helping us to praise the cash, friends.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Praise the cash, friends. So we'll take some comments and questions from the live chat. Honestly, I thought this was going to take me 4 hours to get through. We're way ahead of what I thought would be the schedule. Mark Tarana is here. Welcome, Mark Tarana. It says, there is evidence that some experiencers have experienced some type of phenomenon. I agree. The rest are hucksters and grifters, and how to separate them out is the problem. Just like in the rest of the UFO field, Mark Tarana, I originally started looking into these stories, and what I found was a lot of grifters and scammers. And so I sort of just said, I don't want to talk to experiencers. Then I did talk to many experiencers, and I was really surprised at the integrity of some of them, at their believability. These are credible people that live otherwise ordinary lives, but they have extraordinary experiences, right? John Anomalous is here and says, the CIA has published documents about subliminal wireless communication in their FOIA library at cia.gov. Yeah, I probably have some of those documents. And yes, it should be acknowledged and understood that many people believe that these experiences are somehow related to the alphabet soup agencies, the CIA, the DIA, the DEA, whatever. Pick your poison, pick your intelligence spook, and that these experiences are somehow the government or some nefarious group manipulating people into believing that they are being abducted. Similarly, many people tell stories involving something called My Lab or military abduction, where I don't know, at least people like Stephen Greer claim that people are dressing up like aliens, pretending to be aliens, spoofing people having alien experiences for some nefarious purpose. I'm not quite sure about that. I think there's less evidence for that than for the actual alien hypothesis, right? Star Hunter has to take his meds and go to bed. Well, it's always best to keep up with your meds, Star Hunter. So you have a good evening. Thank you for joining us. Bobby Broadway is here and says, for all we know, the aliens could just be watching us like entertainment, especially if technology already meets all their needs. I agree 100%. Slaughterhouse 5 Zoo, and we don't know it. Yeah, and when I get into this subject, I think, why would they? I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, let's just take off the skeptic hat for a moment and think and accept. If we just accept that aliens are coming here to Earth from other star systems, would they or would they not be very curious about us? Would they or would they not want tissue samples, blood samples, maybe sperm samples and egg samples? Who knows? I think the answer would be yes. If let's say, for example, we encountered a primitive species, like let's say we finally got interstellar travel capability and we went to another star, a nearby star system that had a planet. One of those planets had life on it, and there was a very primitive, let's just say, caveman-like species. Would we, as humans, not grab one of them, get samples, and take them back to Earth? I believe we would. So I can understand why it's a believable scenario. But again, I always come back to the lack of evidence, the lack of proof. It's kind of troubling for me. Even if the experiences were drug-induced, they would not be exactly the same. Yeah, and that's another thing. People claim drugs. People claim sleep paralysis, which I don't really buy. Sleep paralysis is one thing, but why are you seeing aliens? But interestingly, look it up. There's something called the God helmet. And people did this magnetic helmet, and people had very similar experiences to alien abduction experiences. They felt like they were interacting with another being, and the being was more than human, let's just say. And these were experiences that were induced in them by magnetic fields on a helmet. Who's to say that this is not some neurological thing that is being generated in the mind due to an external catalyst or trigger, like a magnetic field? And it's well known that actually magnetic fields can cause dizziness, drowsiness, hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, and more. You get close to a very strong magnetic field and your brain starts doing things. I've often thought that this may be one of the explanations for this event. Who's to say that these people don't have some generator near them or power lines that are causing magnetic fields to be stronger than usual and causing some sort of neurological effect, which becomes the so-called abduction experience. And I've interestingly noted that none of these abduction researchers have ever eliminated that possibility. That would be the first thing that I would do, is go to this person's home and use a magnetometer to see what the magnetic fields were like in the area that they live in or sleep in. You know, I'm not really sure if that's a valid hypothesis, but it's just as valid as aliens coming here and kidnapping people at night. DMT has also been mentioned as a possible explanation, and Steve Nicholson says it could be too much Wi-Fi. Yeah, who knows what these signals, what effects these signals have on us as humans neurologically. It's very, very probable that there could be some external catalysts that are creating these experiences in the mind of the people. Regardless of whether I believe it's aliens, demons, interdimensional beings, it is a fascinating subject, and fascinating to me that so many people are having very similar experiences all around the world. And it goes across religious barriers, it goes across cultural barriers, educational barriers. All different people from all different walks of life, ages, cultural experiences, religious backgrounds are all having these experiences. So to me, it remains a great mystery, worthy of further study and further research. But I would research this from more of a skeptical side. But I am open to all possibilities and have remained so for quite some time. There are students in London that are mapping the DMT space and the entities in them, and my friend is studying endogenous DMT excretion at University of Mexico. DMT is another good explanation, Jeremy Walter. There is substantial and supportive evidence that the body, for various reasons, can suddenly release too much DMT. And that can cause hallucinations, false memories, paranoia, psychotic breakdowns, and literally like people are tripping and interacting with so-called entities. If you haven't, we don't want to suggest that anybody do anything, especially an illegal substance. However, I can just recount my own personal experiences. If you have experience with DMT, I don't want to say it's similar to alien abduction experience, but I felt like I interacted with entities, not the mechanical elves. Mine seemed to be more, I guess, well, I had multiple experiences. And one of them, they were extremely, I would just call them light beings. But they appeared to be intelligent, more than human, and from outside of our normal space of reality. Could somebody else have too much DMT in their system? Maybe not intentionally ingest DMT, but have this spontaneous release of DMT and have a similar experience to what I have, but interpret them as aliens? I think absolutely they could. And as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, the greatest monsters ever created all came from the human mind. It wasn't the devil, it wasn't aliens, it was all imaginings of the human mind. Jeremy Walters says neuroscience is an exciting place to be right now. I was at that path before the lockdown happened. Now I'm back to my photography. Well, everybody goes where they're drawn, right? Yeah, and that's another thing, missing time. I felt like I was nowhere. And I felt like Aaron Flores, when I had a DMT experience, which, by the way, I'm not recommending or whatever. I'm just recounting my own personal experience. Consult your doctor. Never do anything, illegal or possibly harmful. We're not advising you to do that. But in my experience with these substances, I felt like I was there for days. And so is that missing time? Or is that a skewing of your perception of time? And one can also just recount, if you've ever had an experience of marijuana, of time slowing down, right? I have, I once had some edibles and I took a walk and it felt like the walk took me 3 hours. It was a 20-minute walk. So the mind is easily fooled. Our senses are easily fooled. There's a lot of factors here that I don't think people are properly exploring. We've talked about the possibility of magnetic fields creating these experiences. We've talked about the DMT or spontaneous release of DMT possibly causing these experiences. Maybe there's some neurological condition that is not very well researched or well known among neurologists that can cause these sort of experiences. There's many, many possibilities here, but I would like to go more down this road from a science perspective and less from a just listen to stories and believe these people perspective. And it seems to me that most of the researchers were very profit driven and they had a profit motive in order to create the so-called evidence that they presented, much of which is anecdotal stories. And a lot of people told me the same thing. Therefore, there must be something to this. And yeah, I think there is something to this. Aaron Flores says during DMT, you were no longer conscious in this 3D space and time. Well, it sure feels like that. It sure feels like that, right? Mike says this show has been 27 hours. Roller Podger says, don't go to a fake CIA shaman in the jungle. Yeah, we don't recommend that. Bob Marley is here and says, a lot of the very intelligent that were not religious became religious after looking into UFOs. So, man, I think it's best to try to keep a few options open of what UFOs are. Yeah, I'm still open to all possibilities. Among mine are interdimensional beings, time travelers, demons, angels, or other spiritual entities masquerading or just appearing to people through a cultural lens to look a certain way or be a certain way, people somehow perceiving them as aliens instead of what they truly are. I'm open to all possibilities, right? All possibilities, right? Mike says, I liked all 27 hours. Well, as long as you're enjoying it, right? And God forbid I do a 27-hour stream. I get enough haters when I do a 4-hour stream. People say I'm doing that to get another $1 super chat or something. No. There have been times when all the super chats came in the first 20 minutes of a show and I still did a 4-hour show. I'm not waiting around for another $2 super chat. Oh, man. Yeah. And I would like to take a moment to mention something. We have been on Rumble for a few months now, and I'm kind of used to critical comments, and I'm a big boy. I got a thick skin. You can be critical. You can disagree with me. We have a free speech zone here. I really don't care. But boy, that Rumble is really, I guess it's skewed one way politically. And although I can scream from the top of my lungs that I am neither right nor left, I'm sort of a centrist. I believe that the right gets some things right, or I agree with some things the right like and want to do, and I agree with some things the left like and want to do, like universal health care. I believe in that. But for whatever reason, I kind of said that I thought that Q was garbage. And there's an awful lot of evidence that it was all garbage. And boy, are we getting hammered in those comments because of that. we did our show. It's called The Darker Side of Conspiracies. And I talked about the detrimental effects that had, how it had some influence on Trump supporters in January 6th. And suddenly I'm the devil. I'm a leftist maggot. So what, and also, I got sort of warned earlier. Was Eric Awakening Man's like, well, it'll be interesting to see how you come down on this subject, because what did he say? He basically said that thousands of people are going to be angry at me if I don't do tonight's show the way that, I guess to be on the believer side. And listen, I thought that tonight was very grounded, and I gave you my opinions. People are free to have their own opinions. I'm always respectful to experiencers, because it's not easy coming out with those crazy stories. I'm sure that you become the subject of ridicule and mockery, and I try to not do that. And I also am just respectful of people's experiences. You come to me and you tell me you're abducted by aliens, I'm not going to make fun of you. I love aliens. I'm here. I'm interested in all things involved in these topics. But I sort of got warned, like, you better do the show a certain way or thousands of people are going to be angry at you. I don't know if you thought I would just be completely dismissive of the whole alien abduction phenomenon or whatever. And what did Eric say? He said, I'm curious how far over the line you will take this. If you choose the wrong side here, you will be forever detested by literally thousands on Twitter and beyond. I wish you luck. Like, these are not helpful comments. Like, are you threatening me to do a show? I'm not here doing a popularity contest. If I was, we would be all believer woo all the time and get 10 times the views that we get now. If I was here solely to, for financial gain or solely to be popular with certain groups like, UFO land or whatever, I would not be skeptical at all. So it doesn't make sense to sort of throw things like this at me. And so I suppose the Rumble situation, or people being real nasty all of a sudden because they don't like that I don't like, Buanon, or I think Buanon is garbage. And by the way, there's evidence that was a government op. You people that love those stupid stories. And, here's the thing. If you disagree with me, great. I don't care. If you really going to tell me you hate my show and I suck because I don't like Buanon, go watch Simon Parks tell fairy tales about med beds, you dummy. Don't come here. It's very simple. And as far as this popularity contest, we conquer controversial subjects almost every night here. Everything we do is a controversial subject, So I can't do a show for the sole reason of not pissing people off or, not wanting people to disagree with me. This is not a popularity contest. It's a search for the truth seekers of these subjects. And I will say that I try to be balanced. And even though I lean more skeptical, you all know that, I try to be fair to the other side. I try to be fair to the people making the claims. I try to be fair to people who have personal experiences and are very fervent in their beliefs. I respect people who are really deep in their beliefs. And, I've got a friend who, by the way, is a little paranoid, but he's convinced that the aliens are here. They're here. We got the bodies. They're studying us, and people are being abducted. And by the way, on the subject of alien abductions, we should mention that there is a lot of stories that Eisenhower signed some kind of a treaty with the aliens, that we would get some form of technology, and in exchange, we would allow the aliens to abduct a certain number of people. But apparently the aliens have taken way too many people. They're over their agreement limit, but there's no actual, real, or verifiable evidence to support that. Again, it's an anecdote, a story, a trust me dude. But I thought I should mention that. So insofar as, people being critical because they don't like something that I said on the show. Like I cannot, and I will not say things that I believe because it may upset people of different beliefs. I can't, I don't, how am I supposed to navigate that? Like if I had to do a show and every day say, well, I can't say that because people who, believe in Buanon will get upset because I said that and stop watching. I'm sorry if you are not feeling like watching or listening here is worth your time. There's 8,000 other streams going on at the same exact time ours is. I invite you to find one that you enjoy more. I'm going to continue to try to be, balanced and measured and tell the story of the subject, but I have to interject my own opinions or we won't have a show, right? All right, so comments or questions for me? Amy Collins, I would love to see a compilation of all his Cat Queen stories. I'm going to find that stuff. I'm going to find that stuff. Some of those stories are so funny when he starts having sex with the Cat Queen alien and he has alien Cat Queen alien hybrid babies and stuff. I love it. Yeah, I love it. Why is somebody asking me about Carl Wolf in the live chat? Yeah, I'm not really huge. I'm not really. Maybe I have the wrong. I'm thinking of the wrong Carl Wolf. I was thinking of the World War II person. You mean the artist Carl Wolf? We'll show some images of Carl Wolf's work if we can. No? Yeah, I mean, I'm not very familiar with him. I'm aware he's an artist. I'm not very familiar with his work. I, for a time, painted landscapes, though. And I kind of like looking at anybody else that does landscapes just to compare and contrast. And by the way, let's be very clear. I did not do regular landscapes or what you would consider a regular landscape, like a Bob Ross kind of no. Mine were like trippy. They were landscapes, but they were very trippy. Wow, that's so weird. I'm sorry about that. We have some flashing going on in the screen next to me. And by the way, interestingly, I have a friend that I haven't talked to in ages who was an artist, and he and I just talked, and he said, "Yeah, you really should paint again because I have all these connections, and you could sell a lot of paintings." And I said, "Really?" So I've just begun digging out some of my old art supplies and getting some new art supplies, and I'm going to try painting again. But the last time I tried, I just failed miserably. And in order to get back to where I was, I probably, Steve Nicholson, have to paint 10 or 20 horrible paintings first before I'll sort of get back in the groove and be able to do it right again. But I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to try again because I really used to enjoy that. It was very relaxing to me. And you get a painting when you're done. You can give it away. I gave a lot away as gifts and things, right? And but I'll look at more of Carl Wolf's work. It's funny that you mentioned that because I'm just getting back into painting again myself. But quite honestly, I have talk about profit motives. When my friend told me how much you could make, even just selling landscapes on eBay right now, I said, I think I'm going to start painting again. I've been looking for an excuse. Davina TK with a kind and generous $20. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. And thank you as well, especially coming from a member. So not only is Davina TK a member, Davina is also throwing down a kind and generous $20 super chat and helping us to praise the cash. Thank you, Davina. Yes, we thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Thank you very, very much. And UFO John Doe is here. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you here, UFO John Doe. And thank you for being a member. And thank you for your kindness, generosity, and continued support. Longtime show supporter, UFO John Doe. I think UFO John Doe single-handedly. Oh, I don't want to pick it up. There's like some stuff on the cord. UFO John Doe single-handedly bought me this wonderful microphone that I'm using because of his kindness, generosity, and support. We want to thank him and recognize him for that. Says they mad because each year disclosure is supposed to happen. Each year it never comes. Corbell says January was going to start with a bang. Crickets. Hey, we got 7 or 8 more days left in January, UFO John Doe. Why you got to be a hater? Why you got to be a hater, UFO John Doe? Why can't you just... Anyway, thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show, UFO John Doe. A continuing supporter and a channel member. We appreciate you.
You're watching Truth Seekers. Praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support, all you guys. It's much, much appreciated. So I mentioned, if you're just joining us, that we're going back to maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday live shows, maybe Thursday. I just want to say that I don't want anybody to be surprised if one week I get busy with other things and I decide I'm just going to do even 2 shows. Like maybe I'll just do Monday and Tuesday, and that's all I got for you for the week. I really have other priorities. And you know how that goes. Like when you start ignoring certain aspects of your life to focus too much on other aspects of your life, things are out of balance. And I have to get back to some form of balance so that, things are balanced again. I don't know how else to say it. And I certainly have other goals. I got, you can all remember and recall that I used to go to the cabin and still do a show on a Saturday night or a Friday night. And I just can't do that because I got to finish some things at that current cabin, because in the springtime, I have to early spring drop a front porch on that cabin, but I got to have everything else done except for the porch, because then I'm going to drop a cabin on the porch and that cabin is done. Well, done in quotes. I may still build one more bump out room behind the cabin, behind the kitchen, but not for a while. But I need to get that cabin done, like everything done. The walls, the ceilings, everything, the trim, the wiring, because in the springtime, I have to build a new cabin, and I don't want to start on one while the other one's not done. I want that one as close to like literally everything I can be done. And I'm very, very close. I've been building this thing for years. I got to put a few walls up in the bathroom. I got to put a ceiling up in the bathroom, a little bit more wiring, some trim work, and then little stuff. And then that cabin's done. And of course the porch, but I need it to be warm before. I can't do the porch when there's snow outside. So as soon as the spring breaks, I'm going to jump on that porch. That should be 1, maybe 2 weekends max. Then I'm building a new cabin, studio cabin at the new location, which I can't wait to do. So I need this balance because I can't go to the cabin and be doing a 3-hour show on Friday or Saturday. I just don't have the time. While I'm there, I have to be focused on finishing that stuff. And, yeah, Mike says masturbation can wait. That's right. Yeah. Save a lot of time, right? Yeah. And over the weekend, I did make some progress. One of the things that's been stopping me from finishing that ceiling in the bathroom is that the wires for the lighting system, we have 2 lighting systems. We have 120 volt lighting, and we have, regular house lighting, and then we have 12 volt lighting, because there's frequent power failures there. And if we decide to go full solar, the 12 volt lights are much, much more efficient. So anyway, I was not able to finish the ceiling in the bathroom because I had wires that I needed to run through the bathroom ceiling to the room next door. And I'll show you. That's what I did this weekend. I finally finished all the 12-volt stuff is wired. We have these wonderful 12-volt lights, which are incredibly efficient. One charged 12-volt battery can run these lights for days and days throughout the entire cabin. Here's the sleeping loft, pardon the mess. But all the 12-volt wiring is done. The 120 wiring was already finished, but I still had to run the wires for this 12-volt lighting system. That's now done, which means I can now finish the ceilings, and I have no excuses. I've been looking at it going, got to run those wires, got to finish the wiring. I finished all the wiring, so when I go back this weekend, I'm going to be building onto, I'm going to be finishing a few walls in the bathroom and putting the ceiling in, and I got a lot of odds and ends after that inside that I'm going to finish over. I'm going to finish over the winter. So this way, as soon as the weather breaks, I'm building a porch and that cabin's done. I got to do some cleaning up and get it ready for my wife. But then I'm essentially giving the big, beautiful, very comfortable cabin to my wife. And then I'm going to go build a man cabin. The new place is going to be much, much more rustic. And what do I mean? We will not have electricity for now. We may eventually have a small solar system. But when I say small solar system, I mean like 200 watts, like, and a 112-volt battery, just enough to run lights and laptop, and that's it. And the only reason I have to do that is because I plan on doing a lot of work and recording there, so I need the laptop. But there won't be microwaves or toaster ovens, electric heaters, hair dryers, pizza makers, any of that, air fryers, none of that stuff. We're going to have a wood stove and a campfire. That's it. That's all we're going to have. And probably oil lights and candles at the new cabin. Very, very rustic, as little technology there as possible. And in fact, I've already got a Faraday cage, a little one. And when I go there, I'm putting my phone in that cage, and I'm not to be bothered for 2 days, right? Well, I'll pull it out every once in a while and check for messages from my wife or call my wife to check in. But other than that, that's it. And when people come to that cabin, you're not allowed there unless you put your phone in the cage and leave it. You can go check it once a day, but you'd be surprised how many visitors that I have at the other cabin that are so concerned with their phones and being on the internet. And I'm always like, do you realize you're in one of the most beautiful mountain ranges in the United States right now, and you're on your phone? And it kind of annoys me. So visitors to the new location, you're not allowed there. You got to disconnect your phone, or you're not welcome. I don't want to watch you look at your phone all weekend or whatever. It's going to be a place with as little technology as possible. The new place. We're going to have a wood cook stove and gas lights, oil lanterns like back in the day, and candles for light. That's it. That's because when Mrs. Cambian says no show tonight, then no show tonight. That's why we call our wives the handbrake. You're right, blinking liar. Oh, and also, we've been dealing with our children have been sick, and that's terrible, blinking liar. My 6-year-old threw up all over the place on Friday, and I thought he ate something bad, but it turned out probably it's a stomach virus. And so I cleaned the puke a few times. Our whole house smelled like puke, like that bad, gross, make you want to gag stench of puke. It was a bad stomach virus. And then I went to the cabin, and he puked a whole lot more that night all over the bed, and his mom cleaned that up. And then, we got through the weekend, so we thought we were good and nobody else was getting it. But now my older son got it, and he was puking his brains out all last night at 4:00 in the morning. So now we're in biohazard mode, cleaning it up and washing our hands and trying to not get it ourselves. I may have already had it, but mine came out the other end. There's too much information for you. Yeah. And Davina TK says, back to basics. Love it. Yes. And I'm also doing something crazy, Davina, and that is I'm not using any power tools at all. The new cabin, I'm building it with an axe and a saw and a hatchet, and that's it. I'm just going to have some hand saws and hatchets, hand drills. I got all the tools, and we're going to do it the Amish way. In fact, I bought some really antique tools from an Amish person. I bought some something that you use to peel the logs. It's called a draw knife, and some hand saws from an Amish man who's a woodworker. And I'm not going to have any power tools. We don't have any power. There's no, like, I can't plan to build a cabin with power tools when there's no power, unless I want to get into a noisy generator and gas. I hate gas anything. I hate gas lawnmowers. I hate gas generators, gas snow blowers, anything that runs on gas. I hate it because I don't know how to fix them when they break. We're not doing any of that. So if I have no power there, there's no power pole within, I think it's 3 or 4 miles is the nearest, or maybe 3. 2.5 or 3 miles is the nearest power pole. And I think they told me it would cost $12,000 or $20,000 to run all the poles to that property to have electric. So I just said, you know, I want an escape in the woods. Why do I don't need power. And by the way, when I was building the other cabin, I had weekends where there was no power. They had a power failure. We didn't. Anyway, I was very comfortable with just lights and a laptop, or, you know, candles, gas lamps, oil lamps, whatever. I was fine. So I think we'll be okay at the new place. No power tools. We're just going to have oil lamps and a lot of candles and hand tools. We're going to do it the old-fashioned way, right? Somebody's looking for Richie Cunningham. I think they mean Happy Days. Somebody's making Happy Days references over in the Twitch chat. And by the way, I will go over and visit you guys over there. And I want to thank each and every one of you who signed up to be a Twitch subscriber. We're trying to figure out how to get you guys to get the benefits. And we've got 10 of you over there. It's amazing. I want to say hello to the Twitch chat and recognize you guys holding down the Twitch chat over there. I can't tell you how happy I am that I get some money from Jeff Bezos. Our show is getting money, free money from Jeff Bezos every month now. It's amazing. I love it. And thanks each of you for really for making that possible. It's because of the kindness and generosity. And I especially love all you people that are signing up for the freebie. In other words, we played the bumper earlier. If you have an Amazon account, an Amazon Prime account, Jeff Bezos gives everybody $5, I think it is, a month to subscribe to a Twitch streamer for free. So I love it because it's like free money from Jeff Bezos, and it doesn't cost the viewer anything. So we want to thank each and every one of you, and we're already making some money over there. And every month I'm going to get some Jeff Bezos. He's got enough money, right? He's willing to give it to us. Sign up. Help us get that free Jeff Bezos money, right? Algaray's over there as usual, holding down the Twitch chat. Avenging Pineapple is over there, but I'm supposed to call him Fonzie, right? Blinking Liar says you're starting to sound like an Amish dude. Maybe you want a kibbutz? I don't know. What is a kibbutz? I have to look that up. I've heard that term before. Kibbutz. A kibbutz is a communal settlement in Israel, typically a farm. Well, I mean, I can think of worse ways to live, right? Yeah, I could definitely think of work. Aaron Flores, does PA even allow that? What do you mean? A communal farm? I think so. PA's pretty liberal state. We have something here as well called a recreational cabin affidavit, Aaron Flores. And it's especially for people like me who are building like cabins out of logs and trees. You just fill out this form and then you don't need any building permits. And you're on the honor system to make sure it's safe and habitable. And the only thing they require is that any room that you sleep in has a smoke detector and a fire extinguisher. But that's it. Those are the only things. Tony Vilk says, awesome show, Steven. You don't need a kibbutz. No, but I'd be open to that idea, right? I know. Yeah, I looked it up. So it's a communal farm in Israel is a kibbutz. That's what it says for definition. Communal settlement in Israel, typically a farm. But they're kind of beautiful. Based on agriculture, the first kibbutz established in 1909 was Degana. Today, no, look at this. This looks good to me. Look at that. I will share my screen. I learned something today. I had no idea what that was. It looks beautiful to me. Out there with nature. Looks very well planned. That's a kibbutz. And it's a commune in Israel based around agriculture and farming. I guess they all work together communally. Hey, that sounds pretty good to me. But I would much rather just live out in the woods without other people, with the exception of my wife and children. They're allowed. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do that this way. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Look beautiful to me. There's a kibbutz in Israel. I learned something new today. So every day, try to expand your knowledge base. I know I'd heard the word before, but I wasn't sure what it was about. Sunny Sandu says, I'm a new Twitch follower after listening on YouTube for a while. Well, thank you for that. We appreciate you being over there, holding down the live chat. Patty says, amazing building skills. No, I'm terrible. Patty, before I built that cabin, I never built anything in my life. Like I painted things, did a little light remodeling, but building a whole building, I never did anything like that. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I read every book I could find on building cottages, cabins, vacation homes, and I figured it out. And I did a lot of trial and error. I only show you my successes. You don't see like that wall that I built one time that fell down or any of the, one time I was doing that cordwood masonry and we had an avalanche, like the whole wall fell down. Not, it was a front wall though, so it was like 12 foot wide and only half of it fell down. I got pissed off and really depressed because I spent all day building that wall, but I just shook it off, and the next day I built it better, and it's still standing now, Patty. So trial and error, I'd be afraid to do wiring, a fire hazard. Yeah. I'm just really, what I do, Patty, is when I did the wiring work that I did it extremely slow and methodical. Like I would take a half hour to wire one outlet or an hour even, like check it 10 times before I turn the power back on, see if it worked. I'm very careful with the wiring because that makes me nervous as well. But luckily for the sunroom, we have Rogue Status, a user here, come and spend the weekend there at the cabin and wire that whole room. So I didn't have to do that. And he's an electrician. That's his job. Like he really knows what he's doing. So yeah, makes me want to find a kibbutz. I know some Yiddish phrases. Oh geez, no electric in the cabin. No, there will be no electric, at least to start with. We'll just have hand tools and a fire. That's it. Hand tools, we're gonna learn to do things the way the settlers had to do them and just use what you got. Blinken Liar says those exposed timbers going to swell, mate. Yeah, they probably will, because I'm probably going to be building with a lot of green lumber. But there is an awful lot of fallen trees, so we're going to start with the trees that have already fallen, and hopefully it'll go well. And I'm looking forward to spring. I have to get a surveyor there to mark the property line, so we're sure we're not building somewhere we're not supposed to. But other than that, I'm raring to go. I just can't wait to get started. And I have several designs, but I keep fighting myself about the design, so it keeps changing, and it will probably change some more before I actually start building things, or it'll be modified when I start building things. I've never been really big on drawing things out, and more like just get the picture in your mind and start building it. That worked on the first cabin. I'm hopeful it's going to work on the second one. Yeah. Yeah, so we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. We will be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've got a fun one for you tomorrow night. I can't wait to do tomorrow night's show. I've been working on this one for a while, and I'm going to leave it as a surprise, but I'm going to try to post that early, the thumbnail for it early. We'll be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We want to thank you, kind and generous benefactors, you Patreon supporters, you channel members, you Twitch subscribers now. We want to thank you, super chatters, super sticker purchasers. Thanks very much to the super thanks people. Just so you know, you used to only be able to throw money at us on YouTube when the show was live. But if you're watching a replay and you want to support our show and our content, hit that thanks button. And we thank and love and appreciate all you people doing that. It really does help. So thanks to you, kind and generous benefactors. Thank you to chat room moderators. Thank you, all of you, for joining us for tonight's presentation. Tomorrow I got one that's a little more laid back and fun, less data rich, but I'm sure that you will enjoy it. I'll be here at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you will be too. So until next time, friends, that's all I got for you. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion.